Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today is one of my favorite kind of episodes where I actually get to reconnect with somebody that I haven't talked to in quite a while. In fact, it's probably been about 10 years since I really connected with my friend Jane Emfinger, who's going to be on the podcast today. But since we've reconnected, it's just like we never stopped where we were at from 10 years before. And she has a great story and some experiences that I wanted to make sure and share with everybody here on the podcast. Because again, as you listen to these stories, as you listen to the podcast, you're going to be able to see your life in the life of other people, and you'll be able to see what's possible. Because I know a lot of times you think, oh man, nobody else in the world is going through what I'm going through. But I'm here to tell you that there's lots of people going through the same thing. So make sure whatever you do, listen to this entire episode, because what Jane has to say today is what you need to hear. And the fact that you're listening to this means there is at least one or two things in this episode that you need to hear and that you need to share with other people. So with that, let's just roll that episode with Jane. Hey, Jane, how are you doing?
Oh my goodness, I am so happy to be here with you today.
I know it's fun. It's fun to reconnect with people, because I know, we both worked at the same company, and we won't get into all that. But, my departure, it was kind of at a weird time, and we didn't ever really get to say goodbye. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, I see your smiling face, and I think it was LinkedIn, and I'm like, Jane, how are you?
It's so great.
And we just hit it back off again. So I'm excited to talk because you've always been one of my favorite people.
Vice versa.
Yeah. So and I wanted to talk because I know that obviously there were things that changed in your life in the last 10 years as well. And I think there are things that other people need to hear as well. So I guess let's just kind of jump in a little bit. We'll kind of, rewind, fast forward, however we need to. But maybe just give people a little bit of a snapshot of who you are by a couple of, I know some of the major life things that you've gone through.
Yeah.
Right. So give people a little snapshot as to maybe some of these major life things that you've gone through, and then we'll go back and we'll dig into them a little bit more. But that way people can kind of see you and understand that you're a real person going through a lot of the same things that maybe they're going through too.
Yeah, life is a puzzle, and when we put all those pieces together, it's a different snapshot for everybody. But there are a lot of commonalities. I fancy myself a very authentic and transparent person, so that's why you and I get along so well, because we think sharing is important. And when we reconnected, there was a light that turned back on. I was like, you're a friend, but you're also a confidant. And I just appreciate you having me here with you today. Happiness is a choice. And in my life, I choose happy. But happy comes in a lot of different ways. Like a lot of men and women out there, I was part of corporate America for 25 and a half years. I literally spent half of my life in a large organization. But what that looked like for me was, young mother, unfortunately divorced very early. So that single mom situation started, which changes your trajectory quite a bit. I had then that next hurdle. I had breast cancer, and that's where I was when we were connected. And you went one way, and I went another, and that's when we lost touch. But after that, I returned to the very same organization that was incredibly supportive of me during that time. But you're just different, and your energy is different, and you look at life differently after something like that. And then this crazy thing called a pandemic hit. And the same organization that I'd been with for a long time made some changes. And one of those changes was me. They classified it as an opportunity to go a different way. And I did seize that as an opportunity. we had talked for about 48 hours. I didn't look at it as an opportunity. And then everyone that in my life that I've been talking to for so long said, why are you upset about this? And I stopped and I said, I don't really know. I think it's just because it wasn't my choice. And so at that point, I knew I needed to make a left turn. You know, that happened in 2021, the same year that my one and only boy, the love of my life, went to school as well. So he took off for the beautiful Pacific Northwest. He goes to Oregon State. And so here I found myself, you know, the 50 some odd year old, I'm going to keep that.
I mean, I heard 29.
25.
Yeah, okay.
Possibly. That my career had transitioned. My only child had gone to school. I was still, you know, trying to get energy and the Jane back from having a relatively major health scare. So it was time. It was time to figure out what that new path is. And I don't enter these things as you know, acting like some sort of a swami. I can't tell the future, but I knew that I needed to make a decision and harness that happiness and figure out what I was going to do. So I did. And I started my own business, and it's consulting in the organizational development space, which I looked back on the skills that, number one, I enjoyed the most. I looked at the skills that I impacted the most people, and I looked at the skills that I found joy in. And that was helping people, helping organizations create exciting and applicable onboarding programs, and looking at them and figuring out how best they can recognize people. Or let's talk about performance management and figure out what you can do and how you can define your performance management to help everybody succeed, or those that want to succeed can succeed. So I opened up GEM Solutions, and after that had an incredible big new partner, and at the same time needed to figure out where I was going to go philanthropically or continue philanthropically post-pandemic, because a lot of that changed. And there was also a little bubble of time that I wanted to figure out. I wanted to stay part of that culinary world because food is fun for me. So I also, you know, started a side hustle, building charcuterie and cheese boards called Gems Little Bites. And I have just, my world is full, and it is incredible and still a little scary because, you know, with both of those new enterprises, there isn't a paycheck every 2 weeks. So you have to build and think and be more strategic, personally strategic. But I'm having a great time, and I'm in a place where a lot of people, you know, if I can say it, probably around 38 million people in 2021, you know, resigned and found a new calling. And I like to think that I'm one of those.
Well, that's why, and that's why after we've reconnected too, because I've seen some of that, and I've seen some of the light in your eyes from that a little bit, and I want to get there, and I want to talk more about some of that stuff too, because there are so many people now that are, you know, they're like you and me. I mean, we were in corporate for a long time, right? And then all of a sudden now we're not, you know, and it's like there, you know, a lot of people are like, is there life after whatever, right? So let's kind of answer that question and poke a little bit more, because I know I heard you say too, it wasn't my choice. Okay, so let's rewind, because again, and so part of this is, you know, yeah, we both grew up in different parts of the country. You know, we ended up working for the same company for a while, but here's some stuff you didn't even know about me, right? That again, the more we get to know other people, the more we find out that we're all alike in so many different ways, right? So you were divorced, you were a single mom, right? With a son at home.
Yep.
I got divorced. I was a single parent for a while with my, you know, son who lived with me. I've gotten remarried since then. You had breast cancer. My mother had breast cancer. You know, we both had opportunities elsewhere from the same employer, right? And so there is a lot of similarities too, even personality wise. And people are going to be able to see this the more we start talking here, and why I love you so much too. Okay. But let's go to this point of, it's not my choice, right? So was it your choice to be a single mother? Was it your choice to have breast cancer? Was it your choice to have, this opportunity given to you? I'm guessing the answer was no, no, and no, right?
No, no, and no. However, I don't necessarily know if it's about the choice. It's what you do with the outcome.
Ding, ding,
And
ding, right?
what's that, huh?
I was going to say ding, 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 right?
Ding, ding, ding. It really is. And I don't know, it's throughout every one of those steps, I realized that happiness is a choice, that I have said that before, but each one of those opportunities has such a silver lining. Here we go. I went through a divorce very early, and he was my best friend, and you know what? He still is my best friend. Years and years and years later, I spent as much time with my ex-husband as I do with anybody else, and I was able to find an independence, but also maintain that friendship with him. So there's a silver lining. I had breast cancer. It was hard. It was absolutely hard. And I'm not going to say it wasn't, but I got to spend more time with my son than I had since birth. He went into daycare at 3 months old. And then in the 5th grade, all of a sudden, this opportunity came around for me to pick him up from school when I could. We got to spend 6 months together. And that is unheard of for working professional women that don't have staff and don't have all of the things that make that work-life balance, which is another, we could go all about work-life balance. But I'll use it for sake of understanding at this point. And then with my departure from the organization that we were both part of, it helped me redefine who I am. My family just cannot believe the change in me, because it was always go, go, go. And the perfection of every single event in our family, it had to be that, because I was putting on a show for others.
Well, that's what you were doing at work most of the time, right? I mean, you were responsible for putting on shows.
Especially when you do corporate events as well. You're always, like I said, the jazz hands are out. Well, it was an opportunity for me to redefine really who I am. And again, I figured out it's about how to use my voice as well. I mean, we're talkers, you're a talker, I'm a talker. But I also realized that, and I heard a comment from that I think I read it somewhere, that says, they use the same letters in the word silent as they do in listen. And I just absolutely love every minute of that, because now I've learned that listening is so much more important than talking. Mind you, I still talk a lot, but I've just listened to those around me finally, and it's freeing. It's fantastic.
Well, and I know, I mean, because what you kind of experienced is, what I experienced, I know a lot of other people experience, right? You go to school, you get a job, usually in an organization, and you're kind of taught, well, you put your head down, you work really hard, right? You sacrifice, your family and other, I mean, if you're the primary breadwinner, you feel this need to keep your employer happy because you got to keep a job, right? And so that's whether you're a single mom, dad, 2-parent family, working, whatever, right? You feel this obligation to be a good employee, to do the right thing so you can survive, so your family can survive, right?
And it's about survival at times. It really is.
Well, it is. And I mean, sometimes it feels like we're not even going to survive.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, and I think that's where, I see at some point, everybody, it seems like, comes to terms with that, right? Is they realize I've only been surviving. It's about time for me to start living, right? So maybe kind of talk a little bit about that, because I know some of those thoughts had to, I'm sure, have come up, when you were fighting cancer, but now also with this other opportunity too. So how do you kind of deal with or navigate through some of those things? Because I'm sure people that are listening, if they haven't already, are going to have one of those, what some people call come to Jesus kind of moments, right? Where it's like all of a sudden your perspective kind of has to change.
Your perspective has to change. And I've got a few examples of, in my work persona, I was always, and I hope you agree with this, put together. I was always well dressed and I was prepared, and you never knew that there was anything challenging going on in my life until I came back bald. I mean, the bald thing kind of was a giveaway, but especially, so here we go. I went through a divorce. The morning after my husband left, and it was a leaving, it was a left. I was at work the next morning at 8 o'clock. I was pressed. I was ready to go. Nobody knew anything, because there was such that felt so vulnerable. It felt so vulnerable, and it's not authentic. And I understand that. And we'll get to that authenticity piece, but that is what your employer and what your public expects. You're leading people. I was in a customer facing role, so I had to be there and I had to be ready. So at that point, people didn't know that, that things were so tight that neighbors would, just, show up with lunches for Grant and I. We come out the front door and there'd be lunches sitting there, because I had shared with somebody how crazy, money was. You lose 50% of your income. That's things like that happen, but you would never know, because that the screen was up and nobody would ever know that. Then you move on to something like having breast cancer, and you share it with your employer, and they say, well, what's the plan? Here's your plan. And then you start fighting this, and you dig a lot. You're online a lot because you have some time on your hands. Not only are you on WebMD, which you should never do, but number two, you hear people, you're reading these inspirational stories about people that fought cancer, and they worked the whole time. Every day they worked still, which I am going to call big BS on right now. If you were really, really going through it, you may have told people you were working the whole time, or that work that you were doing wasn't terribly effective, folks, because you've got poison in your body. Yep. You are not that effective, but you wanted people to believe that you were fighting so hard. And a lot of people, like I said, they continued with their life as they knew it at that point. But that's a tough one to hear, because I took 6 months and I fought this disease, and I spent time with my family, and I came back, in good form. And that was what I pride myself in, the fact that I did shut down, because I wouldn't have done my employer or my family or myself any good dividing myself between all of that. You got to focus on you. And that's the first time in my life that I had ever just stopped and focused on me. And I had so many incredible people around me that it made it easy to focus on me at that point, because I did the one thing that my best friend, Scott, when I sat down, we were at a little restaurant in Seal Beach, and I told him what's going on. And he said, buddy, I need you to make me one promise. And I thought to myself, okay. And he said, I need you to learn how to say yes. And I said, yeah, Scott, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, when people ask you, do you need help? I need you to say yes. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. And he said, you need to do that, friend. And you know what I did, Jace? I learned how to say yes, and please, and thank you. And the next thing you knew, I had this support system that was bar none the best anyone could ever have. People for, high school friends coming out of the woodwork, just helping, picking my baby up at school, or dropping off food, or giving me a jar that said Kisses for Cancer, and it had a Hershey's Kiss for every day until I was done with chemotherapy, that my Grant could take a kiss out every day, because we were kissing cancer goodbye, and just things like this. And when I sat down and really thought about why that happened in my life, I think it's because I did that for others, and you don't realize it. You don't realize the impact you have on other people until it is reflected in something that happens in your life. And you know why that happened? Because I said yes. And I allowed myself to be vulnerable at that time. And it's not easy. Vulnerability is scary. Because is someone going to find you less than? That's what we teach people. That's what we strong women have to put a front up, because if we show vulnerability, we're no longer strong. Hell yes, we're strong.
Well, that's why I've always told people you're stronger for admitting you need help and having the courage to ask for help or to accept the help than you are to try to soldier on. But it's funny as you were saying that, going through the divorce, right? Nobody at work knew about the divorce. I was the same way, right? I mean, we were separated. I moved out, we moved back, we tried to work on it again, went through, the final divorce. Nobody at work knew that I was going through a divorce. I never told anybody. I wasn't going to tell anybody, right? Because it's the same sort of thing where it's like, well, I don't want to be perceived as being weak, even though, I mean, I was on antidepressants. I mean, I was like high blood pressure, off the charts, health kind of shit that was going on.
Major sleep deprivation.
Sleep issues, but I wouldn't tell anybody because I was a big boy. I was going to handle it by myself, right? And
I didn't know.
You didn't know, yeah.
I didn't know.
You didn't know. And yeah, I don't even think people on my team even knew. I didn't tell any of the people on my team, and it's, I think there is that, because we're afraid of being vulnerable, because most people see vulnerability as a weakness, right? But it's not really. And in fact,
actually,
it's a superpower. Can you say that again so everybody can hear?
Weakness is a superpower.
It's a superpower. I need to write that down too. But it's because what I think is interesting is, I know who you are as a person. I know the heart you have and the caring that you have for other people, right? And so as you're sitting there saying, Scott telling you, you got to learn how to say yes, right? I know you're the kind of person that had been doing these kinds of things for other people who needed help, right?
You just do it. That's what you do.
That's who you are, right? But when we're the ones who need the help, it's really, really hard for most of us to accept the help. But maybe let's just talk about this a little bit, because I know we actually live in the same area. Our kids went to the same high school.
Which we find out 10 years later.
Yeah, 10 years later, we live like 5 miles away from each other, and our kids went to the same high school.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about that, because when you can hide a divorce, cancer is a little harder, right? Because you start going through chemotherapy, your hair falls out. It's like, Jane, what's going on, honey? You decided to go big bald.
Sinead O'Connor moment. No, it was not. It was not by choice.
Yeah, so that you can't really hide. But talk a little bit about, because I know you said friends from high school and other people. What was when you allowed yourself to say yes or to ask for help? How did that kind of change your life?
So it came about, like I said, I had this conversation with Scott, and it's funny because the other most pivotal point happened in the same restaurant. I hadn't been out to dinner in forever, both down in Seal Beach, and my core group of girlfriends. It was after I believe it was after my second chemotherapy treatment. So bald as a cue ball, puffy as all get out. And they said, I was in between treatments. So you're feeling relatively strong at this point. So they said, we'd love to take you out to dinner. And I said, germs, this and that. And they said, no, we're just going to go out. We just want to get you out, because I really hadn't been out. So we went to the same restaurant, and we're sitting at a table, and one of them said, let's take a picture, because we really want to remember this moment. And I was like, no pictures. And she said, no, let's just take one. Because I think 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be able to look back and say, look, remember this moment and look at the change and the transformation. And so we took a picture and she posted it on Facebook without my permission, without even saying anything. And she thought that she was celebrating how they felt how well I was doing. But I hadn't, I mean,
but nobody knew that you had cancer. Now the whole world knows.
So this outpouring of people, I would say 25% were, oh my gosh, and over dramatic about it. Because this is my story. You're not allowed to be that dramatic about my story. 50% were incredibly supportive, incredibly. And there were 25% of the people that were so upset with me. I mean, to the point where some of them used pretty strong language about how come you didn't tell me this was happening? Like, I wasn't sure I was supposed to make a public service announcement about having cancer. And I'm sorry that you are feeling inept or you're feeling fear because I am fighting cancer. It was, but I learned from all three of those reactions. One was to be very appreciative. Another one was to be very careful about, what I tell and share. And those people that were upset are no longer part of my life. And that was the hardest part of that. They chose to evolve and realize it wasn't about them and to reach back out and say, I'm sorry, I reacted out of fear. Then we'd have a conversation about it. But those critical conversations were very few. But I had to edit. I absolutely had to. And I'm not a person that, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'd rather be their glass of wine, but I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And that's understandable. But to reach out and to be angry because of something that was going on in my life, and I was judicious about those that I told because for fear of being vulnerable, for fear of being found less than, right? And just fear, for goodness sake, you're battling cancer.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal, Jason. It was a really, really big deal. But coming out of that, I've been very careful about those that I accept into my life now. And it's something freeing about it. I know people talk about the toxicity of people in your world, and I don't necessarily know if I like that word because, the world is toxic. So we would be completely alone at that point. But I learned so much from that. And then entering back into the workforce, the very first week I was back in the office, and I did have a wig that I wore for the first couple of days because I thought to myself, I don't want to be that arresting. I wasn't comfortable enough with the bald and beautiful look. And I just wanted to make sure that people didn't focus on that part of my struggle. I wanted them to stay focused on my professional attributes and what I bring to the company. Well, that was impossible. I'd already been there, 15 years, and I had, friends abound. But we had a meeting. We had a big meeting, and I will never forget it. This adorable little orange dress on and sandals and my wig. And I was in the elevator, and I did transfer between floors. And I have papers, and I have a pen, and I have my herbal tea because I wasn't back on coffee yet. And it was the absolute perfect storm. My pen drops, the elevator starts, and I bend down all at the same time and completely fall over in the elevator. I'm by myself, mind you. I'm a turtle on my back in the elevator. Tea has gone everywhere. It's down the front of my dress. My papers are all about. And of course, and the wig is.
The wig has to be like Kitty Wampus on your head too, right?
It was. So I finally, I picked myself up really quickly, and I didn't have a lot of range of motion because I still had a lot of damage. So getting up off the floor wasn't, and I'm laughing hysterically the whole time because I had a choice there. I had a choice to sit there and cry, or to pick your stuff up, and get yourself together, So I finally get everything together, and I went back to this big, you remember, right, this big learning center in the organization where we worked. And I walked back in there. It was an open concept, and my partner in crime, Jim at the time, turned around and he just kind of like this. And I said, no questions. All you know is that somebody needs to pick up elevator number 1. So he picked up the phone and he said, he called the office services, and he said,
clean up on elevator 1.
That's exactly, clean up on elevator 1. He said, I have no details. All I know is that there was a massive tea spill. It was hilarious, but it didn't change the fact that I had to walk into a meeting in 10 minutes with the men and women from PricewaterhouseCoopers and conduct a meeting. So I whipped my wig off, put it in the drawer, wiped myself down the best that I could, picked up my things, and walked into the boardroom. And the looks that I was getting, and I just looked at them like, not a word, not a word, not a word, not a word. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. I mean, the befuddlement on their faces was incredible, because I just sat down, and granted, I wasn't at the head. Our fearless leader was at the head, but nonetheless, it was a time for me to sit there and say, I dare you. I dare you to either to ask, to make fun. We'll talk about it. But it was I got so much pleasure out of this. And of course, Jim was with me, and the whole time, and he's looking at me like, what happened? And I'm like, no.
I know, I can see his face too. As you're talking about it, I can see exactly the faces that he was making at you. So,
and we have this look, we always go at each other. And the whole time it was, you can only imagine. So it was things like that I was able to transform into experience and funny. And other than, I wasn't vulnerable at that time. I fell down and looked like a turtle. My favorite orange dress had tea all over it. So what?
Well, and I think that's probably a little perspective, right, that you got from going through those 6 months of fighting. I mean, if that would have happened to you, same thing, you fall over, a year before you have cancer, you would have been mortified. Probably, right? You would have been like, oh my gosh, I got to run back home. I got to do, right?
I probably would have run over to Macy's to buy a new dress to put on, because God forbid I can't, be in front of one of the big 5 and a tea all over my chest.
Yeah, but it gives you a completely different perspective when you go through about what's really important and what's really not. The other thing is, as you were talking about that too, I think, so much of the time, I mean, we're all different, right? I mean, we
fabulously different.
And however we show up, the best that we can show up is, it doesn't really matter, right? So again, like in the meeting, it doesn't matter that you have tea on yourself. It doesn't matter that your wig was kittywampus or you took it off, right? It's like, how you look doesn't have any bearing on the work at hand, right?
Absolutely does not.
And but how much of the time people want to do that? I think that's why there's so many people, and you and I have talked about that, we try to fight for people, because I'm one of those people too, who's a little bit different. But a lot of times people will look at people who are different and, give them that look, or want to ask questions, or want to make fun of them. And it's like, people are just tired of that. They don't need pity.
No.
They don't need pity from people. It would be, same kind of thing where, like, when Jim was looking at you, he was giving you the look like, Jane, is there anything I could do for you?
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't pitying you, but it was, you got this, or do we need to do something? Right. Sort of a thing. And you were making the choice. You were choosing to be happy, choosing to take, right? Because we can cry about it or we can laugh about it. Which one you want to do?
Which one would you rather do? Because I got to tell you, I am an ugly crier. So that laughter piece is just, there may be some vanity there too, but holy smokes. Yes.
But it is, it's interesting. But again, I mean, going through those kind of, life experiences, that's how you learn, right? Or the same thing too of, you know, how you said kind of the 25, the 50, and the 25% of the people as well, right? Is that, you know, you really learn who your friends really are when you're going through some of this stuff, or when you share something, or you're more authentic with them on how the people actually react, right? And if they're into their fear, or they're more embarrassed about how they look because they're with you now, it's like, well, I fucking don't need you, right? If you're embarrassed, you know, because of how I look, then you're not really my friend, you know? And sometimes those people end up kind of out of our lives, but sometimes we want to hold on, right? And I think, like you talked about before, you know, if it's not your choice, well, you still get to choose how you're going to respond, right?
It was a really big, it was a learning moment and a teaching moment for me as well, because the one thing that my son Grant asked me during my entire battles when I would pick him up from school, he said, "Mommy, will you wear a hat when you pick me up from school, please?" And I said, uh, yeah, of course I will, but will you tell me why?" And he said, and I said, does it make you uncomfortable to see mom without hair? Is it, you know, are the kids, would the kids make comments? And he said, "I just don't want people to be mean to you."
Mm.
And I just looked at him, and of course I as well, because I'm a sympathy crier too. And I said, "Well, baby, I'm not worried about that." And he said, "I am." And this is a fifth grader. And I'm sure it had something to do with, you know, kids can be cruel, or they can ask questions that our children aren't prepared to answer. And I understand that. So I did as he asked. I had a little fedora. I put it on to go pick him up. And that was the only time that I was really okay with, you know, protecting my son at that point, because but those were adults. But I got to tell you, I think some of the other moms might have been a bigger issue than the children. So, because you'd look, you know, you'd see the looks or the pity. And I know that it's out of a good place. I knew it was, but I'm like, well, you know, it is what it is. You know, they would say things like, "Well, I don't think I'm going to the house without hair." Do you have a choice? No, you don't. And by the way, I have a really nice head. I was like, hey, at least I apparently didn't get dropped too many times when I was little, you know, other than what my brother would tell me all the time, that I'd get dropped on my head all the time. You know, there were just those things, but I learned so much from how Grant approached it. And I learned so much about how it rebuilt my relationship with my ex-husband, and how my sister was my guardian angel. And I mean, just so many incredible things come from adversity. They absolutely do. But the one thing that it led me to, and I know you and I talked about it a little bit, was on the 1-year anniversary of chemotherapy. Happenstance, I was a neighbor. The neighbor knew how philanthropically driven I was, and I still am. And her company was an incredible sponsor for the Special Olympics World Games in 2016. They're holding a part of them at UCLA and part of them at SC. And she said, "I have 4 tickets that I can't use." And she said, "I don't want to tell my company that I'm not going to use them. Would you like them?" And I said, "Well, yes, please. We've never been to anything that large as far as the Special Olympics were concerned." And so I took Bill, my ex-husband, and Grant and a friend. So we went up to UCLA. Actually, we were on the USC campus, and checked in. And it so happens that this gold level ship sponsor, it was like the behind the scenes kit and caboodle of everything that has to do with the Special Olympics. You got to see how well taken care of these athletes are from all over the world. I mean, it was so impactful to me to see how well they were taken care of. But the one thing that stood out for me were these intellectually challenged adults were the happiest people I have ever been around, despite the challenges that they were born with. I had a year and a half worth of chemotherapy and not feeling well. These are men and women that were born essentially not feeling well and challenged. and they're still the happiest population I have ever been around. You know, I haven't traveled extensively, which is on the list, but you hear about, you know, traveling and seeing different cultures and how you learn from them. Well, this is a population that I think everybody in the world could learn from, because they are the most positive, loving, driven men and women. They have a goal and they're going to get there regardless of it's run, walk, or crawl. They're going to get there. And I have learned so much from them that I've devoted a great deal of my time from that point on helping them learn how to public speak and write for them, and helping them spread because I looked at what was my number one, you know, what do? I talk, and I love to write. So I'm helping these men and women develop their speaking skills, and it has been the best addition to my world. But the happiness that exudes from that population of people is unmatched, and I can imagine in the world. They're incredible, absolutely incredible, and I get to draft off of that.
Well, it is, and it's you know, I think that, isn't it ironic, like you said, right, that the people that the world would say have everything together, they're perfect, they're pretty, they've got money, they've got, you know, the perfect marriage, the perfect car, the perfect home, the perfect career, whatever the perfect is, right? Instagram life. And they are the most miserable people in the world most of the time, you know, and yet the people who we would look at and a lot of people would want to pity, right? Just like some of those people were to you, like, oh, Jane, you know, poor Jane, she has cancer. Well, you know what, honey? I can guarantee you Jane was happier with cancer than you are without cancer.
Absolutely.
Right? Because she chooses to do that, right? And how much when we look around, because like you said, Special Olympics is just amazing, right? I mean, one of my favorite stories, because I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan, I love him. And one of the commencement addresses that he gave, he shared one of the experiences that he had there, right? Where one of the runners falls down. All the other runners turn around and go back and pick him up and arm in arm, right? You know, it's like, don't worry, you know, I'll kiss it better and let's just walk. And then everybody just walks to the finish line together. You know, it's like, how much of a life lesson is that if we would just all be more like that, right? In general, instead of our fighting and our complaining and our victim mentality bullshit that we get ourselves into, and woe is me, pity victim of as I'm going through whatever, you know, what if we started seeing these things as opportunities instead of challenges?
And they are our opportunities. I mean, people often see when you talk about kindness and when you talk about happiness, they see that as you being simple or naive. I think it's our superpower. I think it is something that, I mean, happiness is, yeah, it is a choice, but it is also contagious. And so you know, I mean, the things like greed and sadness and fear, those are all contagious as well. But I just think that, you know, when you spread it, we had the opportunity to bring in a man named Sean Aker, who has a book called The Happiness Advantage. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but if you haven't, or anybody that's going to see this haven't, and it was brought to us by a young man that worked for the company where we worked, and he was considerably younger than we are, and he brought such an incredible perspective. But he's an avid reader, and he said, so we're getting the leaders together, and I don't know if this would work, but it's something that's very impactful to me. He came out of the master's program at CSU Fullerton, and he was just incredible. And I think that if I can remember correctly, the book talked about become more successful. Happier people are more successful. I'm totally paraphrasing right now. Happier people are more successful and more positive, or successful people are more happy, something like that. The second one is happiness is what we feel when we reach our potential. to strive for it. And the other one was about, it's about the belief that we don't need to change. We just need to realize that we can. And so, I mean, this book, it's called The Happiness Advantage. And it's something that, I mean, it stuck with me. I need to pull it out of the bookshelf and reread it periodically, because but he came to talk, and he's incredible. He's got a great TED Talk that it's not very long, obviously, because of the TED Talk. But if you ever need to jump in your day, it's something to watch. Other than videos of kitties or puppies, those help too. But
or listening to podcasts like this one, right?
Or listen to podcasts, exactly. So
well, because the funny thing is with because I'm familiar with Sean, and the whole idea is that so much of the world believes that when they have something, they will be happy. It's the other way around, folks. Really when you are happy, then you get those things, right? It's like happiness is the way that you look at it. It's Jane, when you spill the tea on yourself and getting up and kind of laughing about it, right? It's it's the choice of choosing to do that, right? And to look at everything as an opportunity or a challenge, not necessarily like as a bad challenge, but like as an opportunity to learn, to grow, because everything that you've gone through in your life has helped you get to where you are today, right? And again, which exactly. is a much happier place than you were even just a year ago, before you had that last opportunity as well, right?
Well, yeah, and when I told you that when I had the opportunity presented to me, I figured I had to work it through it. Obviously, you have to think through this, and I called one of my best thought partners, who was a previous boss of mine, who works for a large organization in Orange County, and I told him about the situation, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to. If you call me for me to tell you what to do, I'm not going to tell you what to do." I'm paraphrasing again. He said, "But I've got 3 questions for you."
Yep.
And I knew that he was going to do this because he strongly believes in the power of 3, and so do I. And the first question was, are you growing? And I said, no, we both know that. And he said, number 2, are you contributing at the level that you know you can contribute? And I said, no. And he said, are you happy? And I said, and I started to go down happiness is a choice. He said, I don't want to hear that right now. What I want to know is for you to tell me, are you happy? And I said, no, I'm not. And we had a conversation about it. It was my choice to stay with an organization that I knew was not going to help me fulfill my potential, because it was easy and it was transactional, and I was still making an impact in that intra and interpersonal, in both areas. But that's where that's where the impact that I was making. But I've told you that throughout my career, I've always focused on those who need me and not those who leave me. And it has been a significant challenge for me, because I don't manage up. I never have. And I don't know if there's some, we talk about servant leadership and things like that. I think I might be like a philanthropic leader model, because those that need me are the ones that are going to get my attention. And it's not someone in the C-suite that needs me to stroke their ego. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be polite and collaborative, and we're going to have fun together. But you're not going to get that from me, because you know what? You have plenty of people in your world that do that. What you're going to get from me, you're going to get truth. You're going to get hard work. You're going to get a legitimate Jane. You're not going to get someone that's going to blow where, because it's not going to happen. It isn't going to happen. And it really, so anybody watching this that feels that they are stuck because they aren't managing up, don't start. Be authentic. stay the course. If you need to make a change and you need to reskill and go down another path, have the courage to do that. They talk about curiosity, we talk about courage, and I don't mean to be flip about this, but there's so many buzzwords, and we talk about the skills, the soft skills involved with reaching the C-suite. Just be you.
Well, and I wanted to go there a little bit too, because I appreciate you and the way that you are, in that I think we agreed most of the time. I can't remember any times when you and I got into a little pissing match at work, but maybe we did. I don't remember.
It would probably be very funny and fun.
If we did, right?
We probably didn't, though, because we were usually both putting together solutions and people, and I don't think
so I don't see that happening, but I know, because why I wanted to go here is because I love that you serve those who need me, not those who lead me, right? And I could see this. I knew this in my career. I could see this in you as well, right? Is that you were authentic, you had the heart, you weren't afraid to stand up, and like you said, I'm not going to stroke your ego. It's like, there's plenty of people willing to stroke you if you want to get stroked.
And probably do.
But I'm pumped, right? But anyway, but I'm not going to be the one to do it, because you don't need a bunch of yes men or yes women, right? But what that ends up doing for a lot of us, like you and me, is we get pushed, we get bumped up against, some people call it glass ceiling, call it whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it, but there's some barrier that's holding you back. And I could see that in your career, and I know you experienced some of that directly. But most people would, at that point, kind of give in. And in fact, what I thought was interesting, and if you would share a little bit about what happened to you, because like I said, until we reconnected these last few weeks, this is a very powerful story, I think, as far as, because you were kind of told, right? I mean, you had people that kind of came to you and said, look, Jane, well, you just tell the story, how you're not cutting it and what they ended up trying to do to fix you.
So I had, we were talking about the executive presence.
Yes, we are.
So here, I do have a very successful career. I mean, I built a training program that was the gold standard in the food service industry. And I had trained over 5,000 external brokers with a team, mind you. But I prepared this, and we executed this over a 10-year period. And I just wasn't getting the recognition that I know that I deserved. And so I'm asking the questions, when you're getting less than what we usually called it, when you're doing a performance evaluation, and the less than exemplary, if you're getting a 3 out of a 5, and you're
adequate, I think, is a word that sometimes people use, right?
That's where you should be. That's where you're going to keep going. You're just in. And so I asked the critical questions. If you're going to tell me that I'm not there, tell me what I need to do to get there. And then demand, use that voice and demand what it is. Well, I had the only thing that they could come back with. They talked about executive presence. And so the organization that I worked with made a significant investment and sent me to Minneapolis for 3 days to work with one of the preeminent leadership coaches. She had coached Barack Obama. She had this, and she was like 4'11".
Nice pedigree on the wall.
Oh, and but she is the scariest woman you're ever going to meet. I mean, I'm only 5'3", and if I'm tall, she's tiny, but she is so much in this incredible little package. And but what we did, I mean, it's one of those programs where they beat you down to build you up. But coming out of that, it was, my question was, how do I maintain my authentic self and survive this and move forward? And stay professional. But when I got in there and they talked about word choice. You know, they specifically said I needed to remove 2 words from my vocabulary, which were fabulous and fantastic.
You couldn't say fabulous or fantastic.
Because those are not executive, that's not executive speak. And I mean, it was almost a cartoon, you know, the cartoon dog that goes,
I just did that right now.
So, I had to remove those. I had to smile less. Because at that point, you know, that is, it's vulnerable. It shows people that you may not be as serious. And so that they talked about self-deprecating humor. That is, I mean, that's my shtick. I mean, there are part of it, and I understood that. Let's limit that. Let's not do it. No self-deprecating humor that focuses on your skills. If it's something, you know, it's something else that can be done, but don't ever, you know, just because we typically use that to make your audience more comfortable, which is an age-old storytelling mechanism, but that's okay. So all of a sudden, I just felt them trying to drain Jane out of Jane, and it was the most demoralizing exercise, because yes, we all have room for improvement, and there were some things that I did pull out of there. We learned how to, you know, when you're talking, create a satellite message and go back to that message every time you're presenting. That was incredible. That was something that I brought out of there that I actually was able to cascade to the leaders of our organization. But as I sat down in the Minneapolis airport with the biggest glass of wine you have ever seen, that it was probably 3 times more. I spent probably way more than I needed to, but I was like, this is happening. I really thought about how and why we do this to each other, and how organizations try and create a culture. We talk about culture, and culture is important, and I'm not going to say it's not. I led a culture program with our organization. It is incredibly important, but part of that culture is diversity. And I feel that when we force people to hide their diversity, it's taking away from everything that they have to give to the organization. It takes away from their time, and they're spending more energy trying to hide that diverse either look or idea or approach, and trying to convert over to what this culture pattern or the culture, this prescribed culture. And I felt like that's what they were doing to me in a way. And I came back and I didn't change that much. So apparently they didn't appreciate that. But I mean, I continued to grow incrementally. There just weren't any of those incredibly large jumps. And then when my partner in crime retired, I was the heir apparent for his role, and it was a leadership role. And there was nobody more suited for it than me. There wasn't. And they did a silent search and brought somebody from the outside in, and gave her the role. And I found out, up until the day before, I was still being told, you got it, like, come on, keep working. And then they made this announcement, which is the day that I should have, you know, pulled up myself up by the bootstraps and made a change, but I didn't. But that was a big one. That was a big one. And when I said something about it, I was told, do you know how many people in this building would like your job? Mm-hmm. Wow. And I didn't take it as a threat at that time. I just took it as a blow to my everything. But when I shared that, everyone was like, oh my heavens, you didn't do anything with that? I'm like, what am I going to do with it? It's my choice. I chose to stay with an organization that supported someone that would say that.
Yep.
You know, I mean, typically people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Yep.
Right? And to have a manager say that, and again, that was only a little while before the world shut down and life took a turn. But I have learned so much from these exchanges that I don't know if I would have changed it. I may have moved a little quicker if the company hadn't given me that nudge. But holy smokes, Jason, I just know now that I would never put anyone in that position. Mm-hmm. Transparency is so very important. And when you're not transparent, you don't get the most out of everyone around you. And anyone that has ever been in this position that may tell themselves, oh, I should have done this, or I would have done this if I'd known that. Regret is a wasted emotion. Just turn it around and move forward. And I can say that to anyone listening, that is what you have to do, because there's no benefit to regret. You may learn from it. I'm an athlete, and I grew up with, they would say either you win or you lose, right? The second place is the first loser. I mean, those are things that would come out of my coaches and my family. I mean, that's how we would talk about it, or we giggle about it. And now I really look at it as you win or you learn. Mm-hmm. Right. And I learn. I mean, I don't win all the time. I do love to win. I'm incredibly competitive, mind you. But I learn daily. And life is too short to regret, and just learn from what you encounter every single day, and keep a smile on your face.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think it's, a lot of people, I usually tell people you can either be responsible or you can play a victim. Which one you want to be, right?
Let's not go to the victim mentality.
And we're not going to talk about that here. I talk about that enough already. But you kind of, brought that up and showed that here, as far as, you were, in my opinion, you were horribly treated. It doesn't surprise me, knowing who some of the people were that you were dealing with there. But that's, to tell somebody you can't say fabulous or fantastic, you have to smile less, you're not serious enough, it just takes away, from the individual. And I know when we were talking before, it's like, it's becoming more and more apparent how much corporate leadership training is just to lobotomize people and make everybody the same. And like you said, it's, for people, culture needs to be diverse. We need more people that are diverse in organizations. We need more people that are diverse in every way. In every way, on teams, on, because everybody has something to offer. And it's just despicable that we're not allowing people to be themselves, because you could feel that, right? And I think when we were talking before, you even said the first little bit, when you came back and you were trying to do what they were telling you to do, everybody's like, where'd the old Jane go? We liked her. Who's this new person?
And all of a sudden it's what was I know another this is one that when I would retell the story originally, I would say I was embarrassed about it, but it was probably one of the biggest moments. So after I came back from having chemotherapy, bald as a cue ball, we had an event that this is November of, I won't date myself, but it was November. And that next April, I had already contracted for a large corporate event that we were doing, and it was a national meeting, and we still hadn't talked about talent that we were bringing in. And I had this vision to bring in, we had a number of folks in the armed forces, and they had loved ones abroad. And I looked into how you could bring someone home too. You see those on TV, you see them at the basketball games, you see them here where they're, how long has your daddy been deployed? And all of a sudden he walks out, and it happens. And I'm telling this heartfelt of explaining what my vision is. And I'm talking to the CEO, I'm talking to CHRO, I've got my partner in crime with me, we're in the boardroom, and my eyes welled up with tears. because I'm so passionate about this. And I looked at, I mean, literally, it was one of those, oh gosh, my brain is like, stop, 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 stop. And my heart is like, how can you not? Because you were so passionate about this. And I wish I could have, I could have had those thought bubbles coming out of my head, because what one side of me is saying, executive presence, you don't cry in the boardroom, and this isn't, but my heart saying, you were passionate about this, you really want to do it. And I'm looking at the CEO blinking, and he is dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this woman is getting ready to cry. And I didn't, but it just used, I mean, I have pretty vibrant eyes, and when they well, they well. And I remember going back to my office saying, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed this happened. What am I embarrassed about? Because I was human, and I showed emotion, talking about something that could have been one of the most impactful things I could ever do for someone. And unfortunately, it didn't pan out, because there was no way that we could
make it
surreptitiously find out information about people. It's not legal to ask those kind of questions of people unless they, so it didn't happen. But to think that I couldn't show emotion when talking about reuniting a family that could have been apart for years, with the uncertainty of deployment in part of it, it was so pivotal. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, Jane.
Well, and to me, the sad point too in that story, because you hadn't told me that one before, is, again, that you unfortunately had that juxtaposition in your brain, because you were told you can't show emotions.
Oh, no.
But humans are emotional. And the sad part, and again, I mean, knowing the leaders who were in that room with you, they were emotionally immature and looked dumbfounded, because they didn't know how to react or respond to another human being that was actually showing emotion. And that's what's sad, is a lot of the people who think that they've got all their shit together, they are so emotionally immature. And that's why they want to make everybody else into robots, because they can't handle emotion around them. Right. And to me, again, it's sad, because, I talk about executive presence, but what you were taught about is not what I teach. Right.
No.
Because it's like, it's totally different, folks. When you really know this, when you really do this, it's totally different. Right. And so it's yeah, like I said, it just pisses me off when people do that, because it's okay to feel emotion. In fact, I'll even go back to, I remember the story of Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, right? And him standing on the cliff on D-Day, watching all the people leave, and he was crying. If a 5-star general, in the middle of a war can cry, and it's okay for him to cry, then why the fuck is it not okay for us to express emotions at work? Come on, folks. I mean, again, we've got to temper it. There's a time and a place, but there's no reason why we can't, if it's genuine and authentic, that we can't actually do that. We're human beings, after all.
We're human beings, and it's and again, like I said, when it's genuine, and there are times when people use it as a tool, and they use it as a crutch, and I know that there's plenty of women and men and women that'll start the waterworks in order to make somebody uncomfortable, to stop the talking about a situation or things like that. I do understand that they use it to manipulate people at times as well, in business and relationships and wherever you're going to do it. Not one of those, for sure. But nonetheless, it's hard, and I really, right before I was getting ready to leave that my long tenure with the company, I do feel like I do need to say that this company properly celebrated me. They really did. I was so supported and surprised on the way out. It was really, really, but the people that reached out, I actually had some people saying, what am I going to do without you here? And I thought, you don't report, my brain is, you don't report to me. you don't, I mean, I really don't impact your daily, but they'll say, you know, you've been here since the day I started. You onboarded me. And I have someone that said every time I come by, I look for your smile when I'm on my way to the restroom because my office was there. But what am I going to do every day without that? And those were the comments that, and I guess, the pillars of industry would say, well, are you talking about what strategic contributions that you've made? Or did they come by and say, oh, what was your impact? What was your fiscal impact to the organization this past year? But if someone is going to have a hard time going forward because they didn't see a happy face every day, I've done my job.
Yeah.
I've done my job. And this was an executive vice president of that organization that said, what am I going to do without seeing you every day?
Yeah. No, even the little things like that of making somebody, smiling to people and making them feel just a little bit better during the day is huge. It's more important than a lot of the fiscal stuff in the organization. Again, we both like to talk, but we got to kind of do the timeout. We'll have to do another episode as well. But I wanted to thank you because I know it's hard sometimes for people to express or to talk about some of these things. So I applaud you for doing that and for having the courage to say that, even though, again, you might have been a little embarrassed about it, but it's by us sharing, by you sharing, that other people can realize that it's okay for them too, right? They're not alone. Other people are dealing with the same kind of stuff. And so I appreciate you coming on and bearing your soul a little bit. So
no, actually the thanks go to you. Thank you. It's been cathartic, really talking about it with someone who does understand. But I mean, and you and I mean, our opinions differ in a lot of ways too. And you've helped me look at things differently. And it's going to sound corny, but if one person listens to this and says, okay, I was part of the 38 million that found myself in 2021, adrift, and with this, maybe I can adjust my sails. What do they say? The pessimist, the optimist adjusts their sails. However there's a saying that is very poignant, but I can't remember it right now because I have no memory anymore. Welcome to
middle age, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I can't blame it on chemo brain anymore. But it's just, I mean, if there's one person out there that can adjust their sails and find a new course after listening to this, or has found someone that they want to reach out to, and you and I to talk it through, our job here is done.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's, like you said, we're both here to serve those who need us. That's why we're here. That's why we did this. So, yeah.
I don't call myself a trusted thought partner for nothing, right?
No, exactly.
And that's my tagline, and I'm sticking to
it. Well, Jane, thank you. It's been a real treat getting reconnected with you. And like I said, we're gonna have to do some other stuff together too. So
I cannot wait. I've been so excited about this since just reconnecting and prepping for this has really, really helped me think about everything that I have accomplished in the past 25 and a half years. And how lucky I am. I'm just a lucky human being. Like we said, we'd rather be lucky than smart, right?
Exactly. Well, and I'm glad that I've been lucky to have you in my life as well too. So it goes all around, so. And again, thanks for coming on today, and we'll have to do something else in the future again too, I'm sure.
We will, but I'm sending you a big virtual hug, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon.